All right, I'm gonna show you the proper way to restring a classical guitar. We're gonna start off with the bass E string. We're gonna feed the string through the bridge. You wrap it around from the opposite side and then in. You wanna make sure that this little tail is long enough that the A string will then be able to wrap around it. I will now feed the string through the tuning machine post and then start winding a little. What I do is I sort of wrap it around the end. So it's not tied on, but the string is looped around and under. So this first half turn, it suddenly locks the string in place. So later on, when you want to replace the strings, it's not as though you have to get a pair of side cutters and trim the string. Rather, you can just unwind it, and as soon as the tension is reduced, the string will easily and happily unravel. Next is the A string, and I don't know if you can see, but now I'm gonna tie it so it goes around that string and holds it in place. So I'm gonna loop it around the far side, back towards me, and then through the loop once, so it's sitting on the south side of the tie block. So this A string is not only holding itself in place up on the south side of the tie block, but it's also now holding the treble E string, just like that. And I'm gonna go back to the A string tuning post, run it through like so. I've run it through, and now around, under, and I'm gonna pull up. So it's, again, it's not tied on, it's just looped around. Looping it around locks it in place, making it so it will not slip. Now the wound strings are less likely to slip than the plain nylon strings, but you wanna make sure it locks in place, because the last thing you wanna have on your beautiful $4,000, $6,000, $12,000, $18,000 classical guitar is the string suddenly letting go, slapping back, and damaging the soundboard. You can see there's a few marks here from in the past where the person was changing the strings maybe and they didn't tie them properly. A common problem I see is people looping the string only around itself. Again, I want to go on the opposite side. So now this string is looping around the tail of the A string, and I'm making it so it's just a little bit longer. That way the G string after will be able to catch onto it. Now there's this excess tail. What I can do is take a pair of nips very carefully without damaging the soundboard, touching the soundboard. You want to keep it nice and safe, tying it nice and tight. I'll push it through the machine head post hole. And again, just like last time, I'm gonna hold it up like so and pull it underneath, just loop it under. Again, we're not tying it. That tension is gonna keep this in place and kind of lock them in without actually like tying them on. Nothing like having a guitar come in and the strings are tied on so wickedly that you gotta go in there with surgical tools to remove the old strings. So now the wound strings the plain strings are a little bit different. What we're gonna do is with the G string, I'll go through again just like the wound on the opposite side and in and under, and I'll do it once more. Oops, try this one more time here. There we go. Just once and twice. tail is long enough and it's exiting on the back side, the south side of the tie block, the B string will be able to wrap around it and hold it nice and tight. If you look closely, you can now see that it has a little bit of a twist. I've curled it around twice, see? Same method as before, through the peg hole, wrapped it around once, just like so. You've done it already a few times. Now, I'll take our string winder, just get it. Oh, look at that, the G string is nice and tightly wound in place. One other thing I like to point out is that I myself, stylistically, prefer to have it so the strings are always winding towards the outside, the outer edge of the peg box wall. That way it's always a nice sort of corkscrew fashion. See, this one goes outside, 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 outside. You want to make it so those strings don't intersect with each other. That way you can make sure that when you're tuning, none of the strings are binding. Okay, so this one is the B string. And this one is also a little bit different. What I'm going to do is bend out the tail from the and I've got the G string wrapped around, and I'm gonna wind not once, not twice, but thrice. Again, it's holding on to the G string. I'm gonna pull it tight, or I'm not gonna bother putting it onto the peg head yet. I'm now gonna take the treble E, and I'm gonna put the treble E through. And this one is mirror imaged. So instead of wrapping on the far side, this time I start on the close side. And I go inwards through once, and twice, and finally thrice, 3 times. I'm gonna pull it tight. The E string is holding on the B string, and now I'm gonna do a mirror image. As you can see, I'm gonna pull it closer. Now, the E string is gonna go into the wound portion of the B string. I'm gonna pull that nice and tight, and I'm gonna have it so it's also on the south side. I have to tidy up the windings here. Now they're nice and tight. I'm gonna put the B string through the post hole now. Again, I'm gonna lock it in place, not tie it. You don't wanna be the one who ties it. There's all kinds of old-fashioned methods of putting strings on if you think about it. So often it's the father, the mother, the grandfather, whoever, who teaches the young person how to put the strings on. And the cool thing is that over time, the mechanical components of musical instruments can change. Now look at a violin, for example, maybe not, but there's different types of tuning machines, different types of strings that exist these days. So slowly, the techniques also evolve. This is not a new way, but it's an exceptionally good way of putting nylon strings onto a nylon flamenco or classical guitar. And my friend Matthew Harder, who is a very fine luthier and classical guitarist, showed me this one day. And so often people ask me, how do you put classical guitar strings on? Well, there's a little video. So now I'm gonna take these excess windings, or the excess portions of the strings, I'm gonna just trim them. Again, never let those pliers touch your soundboard. You'd feel like a real chump if you did that. Don't do that. Don't wreck anybody's guitar. Always treat it as good as you can. And then I'll trim the excess here. And these might be easier to trim from the back, so I'll do that. Some people will use a lighter and melt the ends. You can do that if you want. It'll reduce the amount of fraying that can occur, but chances are it'll be just fine. So now we have a nicely tied tie block on a classical guitar and a relatively clean looking headstock. And yeah, so when you're putting new strings in your guitar, don't make a mess of it. Do a nice job. Like and subscribe. Thank you. Have a good day. Hamm-tone Guitars.